So children, welcome back to e-learning classes of P.N.AMERSEY High School. Hope you all are safe. Children, in the last video, we were discussing about the open window chapter number 7 of our supplementary reader. I explained you that Mr. Phantom Nuttall sitting on the chair had some mental illness. With the advice of his doctor and his sister, Mr. Nuttall went to some rural areas to visit some family friends so that he can cure his nerves. So when he reached there, he met a 15-year-old girl and she said something very strange about the open window behind him. She said that 3 men went out 3 years ago of this window, but they never came back. But her aunt, Mrs. Stapleton, is still waiting for them to come back. The girl added that Mrs. Stapleton's husband and her 2 young brothers went out for shooting. While crossing a grassland, there was a piece of bog, and all of 3 engulfed in that dangerous bog. In the last video also, I explained what is bog. In Hindi, we can call it daldal. What happened? 3 of them and their spaniel dog, 4 of them sank into that bog. This Mrs. Stapleton is still waiting for those 3 to come back, and according to that girl, 3 years have passed. And now let's start part 2 of the story. Mrs. Stapleton comes down at last and inadvertently confirms her niece's story. He tries to acquaint his host with the nature of his ailment. Ailment means Mr. Phantom wants to confirm that he has some kind of illness which is not very serious. Through the open window, he can see things that wasn't his nose. These are the main points of part 2, but we'll discuss these points in detail. So by reading the points, we come to know that Mrs. Stapleton has come down. She broke off with a little shudder. Shudder means she is shaking, shivering that she has come late and her visitor is waiting for her. It was a relief to Phantom when the aunt bustled into the room with a whirl of apologies for being late in making her appearance. Mrs. Stapleton is feeling sorry that she has come late and Phantom was waiting for her. I hope Vera has been amusing you, she said. She has been very interesting, said Phantom. I hope you don't mind the open window, said Mrs. Stapleton briskly. My husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting and they always come in this way. They have been out for snipe in the marshes today, so they'll make a fine mess over my poor carpets. So like you men folk, isn't it? Children, what was shocking for Mr. Phantom Nuttall that as aunt arrives, she started talking about that open window and she said that her husband and brothers have gone out and they will come back from the shooting. Means knowingly Mrs. Stapleton confirms her niece's story. Now Mr. Nuttall feels that whatever that girl said was quite true. Stapleton needs more treatment than Mr. Nuttall. She rattled on cheerfully about the shooting and the scarcity of birds. Scarcity of birds means there are no birds left or very few birds left for shooting. When she discussed about the prospects for duck in the winter, means in winter ducks are also no more left here. It was all purely horrible. Now children, isn't it very horror story? This lady is waiting for those people who have left since 3 years ago. He made a desperate but only partially successful effort to turn the talk onto the less ghastly topic. Now see, he was thinking that this topic is very ghastly, means talking about ghosts. He is trying to change the topic, but it was useless. Mrs. Stapleton continuously talked about her husband and brother, so he is feeling very horrified. He was conscious that his hostess means Mrs. Stapleton is host because Mr. Nuttall has come to her house. So Mrs. Stapleton is hostess and Mr. Nuttall is visitor. He was conscious that his hostess was giving him only a fragment of her attention, and her eyes were constantly straying past him to the open window and the lawn beyond. Means this lady is looking at the window and she is not looking at Mr. Nuttall. It was certainly an unfortunate coincidence that he should have paid his visit on this tragic anniversary. According to the doctor, Mr. Nuttall needs peace of mind. But what happens here? He has to face such horrible situation. Mr. Nuttall continued that the doctors agree in ordering me complete rest, an absence of mental excitement and avoidance of anything in the nature of violent physical exercise, announced Frentham. So children, here Mr. Nuttall was feeling uneasy and he told Mrs. Appleton that he has come here for mental rest. He continued that who labored under the terribly widespread delusions that total strangers and chance acquaintances are hungry for the least detail of one's ailments and infirmities, their cause and cure. On the matter of diet, they are not so much in agreement, he continued. So, this Frentham Nuttall told because he was under the impression that strangers or familiar people are always curious to know even the smallest detail of anyone, smallest illness or weakness, what causes it and what is the cure on it. So, Frentham was feeling very difficult to talk about all this, and at the end when he said on the matter of diet none of the doctors agreed because they all told him to take different diet. At that time, Mrs. Appleton was not actually interested in whatever Mr. Nuttall said, as he was continuously looking at that open window. So in between now Mrs. Appleton said, "Here they are at last, just in time for tea, and don't they look as if they were muddy up to the eyes?" Children, as Mrs. Appleton was not interested in what Mr. Nuttall was saying, at that time, Mrs. Appleton saw her husband and brothers behind. "They have just come in time for tea," she said. Here, when Mr. Nuttall is trying to change the topic, suddenly Mrs. Appleton saw someone coming from behind. And who are they? They are Mrs. Appleton's husband and brothers. This was at the peak of horrors for Mr. Nuttall. Frentham shivered slightly and turned towards the niece with a look intended to convey sympathetic comprehension. The child was staring out through the open window with a dazed horror in her eyes. A chill shock of nameless fear, Frentham swung round in his seat and looked in the same direction. Here what Frentham was thinking, Frentham is thinking that Mrs. Appleton is just imagining that people are coming. When he looked at the niece, the child was looking out of the window with the horror in her eyes. So now a chill shock came to Mr. Frentham and he swung round suddenly and looked behind in the same direction where this girl and Mrs. Appleton are looking. Deepening twilight, three figures were walking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under their arms, and one of them was additionally bound with a white coat hung over his shoulder. A tired brown spaniel kept close at their heels. Spaniel is a dog. Noiselessly they neared the house, and then a hoarse young voice chanted out of the dusk, "I say, Bertie, why do you bound?" In beginning of the chapter, we know that Mrs. Appleton's brother used to tease her saying these words. So now children, what happened? As Mr. Frentham turned back, what he looked, he saw three figures coming toward the window, and yes, they are her husband and brothers and spaniel dog came back from the forest. So children, let's keep the explanation till here only. I'll explain part 3 of the story in the next video. Till then, stay safe, thank you and have a nice day.